It's a fundamental mistake, one of the oldest in the universe. To judge the lethality of a weapon by its casing. To assess the ferocity of a predator by the softness of its skin. To look at a creature forged in a crucible of relentless evolution, a world of beautiful, savage persistence, and see only a fragile, bipedal mammal. High Command Attaché Kaelen of the Xylosian Dominion was making that mistake right now. He gestured with a three-fingered hand, his chitinous plates clicking with derision. The polished obsidian of his exoskeleton reflected the sterile light of the Alliance briefing room. His voice, a low rumble that vibrated through the floor, was laced with disbelief. "Sergeant Rostova," he began, the title dripping with condescension as he tapped the data slate displaying her service record. "Alliance command vouches for your efficacy. Your file is impressive, on paper." He paused, letting the insult hang in the air. "But this metric here," he tapped the screen again on a three-digit number under the header "Confirmed Terminations." "This is a clerical error, a statistical impossibility for a single, unaugmented specimen of your species. Your people are soft. Your bones are like chalk. This number belongs to a heavy assault drone squadron, not a maintenance NCO who happens to carry a rifle." The other delegates in the room, a stoic silicon-based life form from Kepler 186F and a pair of gelatinous diplomats from a gas giant, shifted uncomfortably. They knew of Kaelen's species. The Xylosians were warriors. Born in high gravity, clad in natural armor, they saw strength only in the overt, the physical, the brutal. They couldn't comprehend lethality that was quiet. Sergeant Eva Rostova had been standing by the viewport, looking out at the star-dusted velvet of space. She didn't turn immediately. She just listened. She was a small woman, unremarkable in her gray Alliance fatigues. There were no bulging muscles, no cybernetic limbs, no scars etched across her face for show. There was only a stillness about her, a profound calm that seemed to absorb the Xylosian's contempt without reaction. When she finally turned, her eyes met his. They were pale blue, and to Kaelen they looked like chips of ancient ice. They held no anger, no indignation. They held nothing but a quiet, patient certainty. She walked across the deck, the soft scuff of her boots the only sound. She didn't stop at the other side of the large conference table. She walked right up to it, placing her hands flat on its surface, leaning forward just slightly. She was a sparrow facing a hawk, and she did not blink. From a pouch on her belt, she produced a small, metallic rectangle, a standard-issue military data drive, old-fashioned but reliable, unhackable on a closed system. She slid it across the polished table. It came to a stop directly in front of Kaelen's claws. Her voice, when she spoke, was low and even. It wasn't a weapon. It was a statement of fact. He doubted her kill count, so she handed him a thumb drive and said, "Start with folder 1, HFY." And with that, she straightened up, crossed her arms, and waited. A tense silence filled the room. Kaelen's mandibles worked for a moment, a flicker of irritation crossing his multifaceted eyes. This was theater, a bluff, an emotional display from a lesser being, he would call it. He picked up the drive, his large claws surprisingly delicate as he slotted it into the terminal beside his data slate. The drive's directory appeared on the screen. It was starkly organized. Folder 1, the nest. Folder 2, Ghost of Cygnus. Folder 3, Beacon 7. Folder 4, Cathar Compliance. Folder 5, Homecoming. Arrogance demanded he start at the end, to show he wouldn't play her game. But a deeper, more primal curiosity, the part of his warrior brain that assessed every threat, stayed his hand. He would follow her rules. He would dismantle her little charade piece by piece. His claw double-tapped the screen. Start with folder 1. The file opened. It wasn't a dossier or a report. It was raw, unedited helmet cam footage. The timestamp in the corner indicated it was from 6 years prior. The audio crackled to life, heavy, ragged breathing. The frantic, terrified voice of another soldier. "Gods, they're everywhere, fall back, Rostova, fall back." Eva's recorded voice was unnervingly calm. "Negative, Corporal, hold the line. Choke point is 50 meters ahead. Use the geology." Kaelen leaned closer. The footage was dark, lit only by the beam of a rifle-mounted light cutting through thick yellow spores. The walls were tight, organic, and pulsating. A hive. He recognized the architecture. This was a scuttler nest. Scuttlers were a plague species, fast, six-legged creatures with razor-sharp forelimbs and a hive mind. A Xylosian eradication team would clear a nest like this with plasma throwers from an armored vehicle. Brute force. Overwhelming power. The human method he was learning was different. The camera, fixed to Rostova's helmet, swept downwards. He saw her hands. She wasn't holding a heavy weapon. She was jamming the stock of her standard-issue pulse rifle into a fissure in the chitinous wall, angling it just so. Another soldier's panicked voice came over the comm. "They've breached the west tunnel. They're flanking us." "I know," her voice replied, still steady. "Let them." Kaelen didn't understand. This was suicide. The scuttler's primary tactic was envelopment, but then he saw what she was doing. She was pulling a thin monofilament wire from her pack, stringing it between the rifle stock and a rock outcropping. A tripwire. But it wasn't connected to an explosive. It was connected to a small, vibrating sonic device. A scuttler shrieked, and a wave of them poured from the west tunnel. They were a tide of clicking, chittering death. The other soldier opened fire, his pulse rifle stitching bolts of plasma into the horde, but there were too many. Then the first scuttler hit Rostova's wire. The sonic device emitted a high-frequency pulse, inaudible to a human, but Kaelen knew their biology. To the scuttlers, it was the precise frequency of a rival queen's challenge. The horde, driven by instinct, stopped its advance. It froze, confused, its hive mind momentarily fractured. It was a pause of less than a second. It was all she needed. Her light flicked up, illuminating a large, sac-like growth on the ceiling, dripping with volatile, flammable fluid. A gas bladder, a natural part of the hive's ecosystem. The Xylosians would have ignored it. Rostova had identified it. Her rifle cracked once, not a spray of panicked fire, but a single aimed shot. The bladder erupted in a plume of incandescent fire, engulfing the entire tunnel and the confused scuttler horde. The helmet cam went white with the glare, the audio peaking with a deafening roar. When the view cleared, the tunnel was a blackened, sizzling charnel house. The file ended. The kill count for that single shot was 53. Kaelen sat back, the clicks of his chitin plates suddenly silent. That wasn't strength. A Xylosian whelp could have crushed a scuttler's head with one hand. That was something else. It was an understanding of biology, of instinct, of environment. She hadn't fought the enemy. She had made the enemy's own home, its own nature, kill it. It was a terrifyingly efficient, intellectually brutal act of war. He looked over at Rostova. She hadn't moved. Her pale blue eyes were still locked on him, her expression unchanging. It wasn't a look of triumph. It was a look that said, "You see, keep going." His claw, trembling almost imperceptibly, moved to the next directory. Folder 2, Ghost of Cygnus. This folder was different. No helmet cam footage. It contained a series of encrypted communications, stellar cartography charts, and a single, grainy video file labeled Execution. Kaelen's intelligence background allowed him to parse the data quickly. The target was Warlord Vrax, a brutish, Krogan-like pirate king who commanded a fleet from his dreadnought. the Iron Maw. Vrax was infamous for his personal energy shield, rendering him nearly invulnerable to assassination attempts. For months, Alliance intelligence had tried and failed to get a kill squad near him. The folder detailed a new approach. Operation Ghost, one operative, no weapons, infiltration only. The operative's name was Rostova. The comms logs showed her, under a false identity as a low-level tech merchant, gaining access to a supply freighter docked with the Iron Maw. The next series of files were technical schematics of the Dreadnought's environmental systems, annotated in her handwriting. She wasn't looking for a path to the bridge. She was studying the ship's atmospheric recyclers and protein synthesizers. Kaelen felt a cold dread creep up his spine. This was the same pattern. She wasn't attacking the warrior, she was attacking his world. The final video file was short and silent. It was security footage from outside Vrax's personal chambers, time-stamped 3 days after her infiltration. It showed the warlord, a mountain of muscle and rage, striding toward his door. He seemed agitated, bellowing at his guards. A text overlay, an intelligence summary, explained. For 2 days, Vrax had been suffering from a minor but persistent skin irritation. A custom-tailored biological agent, harmless but maddeningly itchy, had been introduced into his private shower system. His species prized martial purity and was fanatically obsessed with ritual. The itch was a violation, an impurity. To soothe it, his personal physician had prescribed a meditative trance inside an isolation chamber, a room sealed off from the rest of the ship's atmosphere, with its own purified air supply. It was the one place he would lower his personal energy shield. The video showed him entering the chamber. The heavy door hissed shut. Nothing happened for 10 minutes. Then the door hissed open again. Warlord Vrax stumbled out, clutching his throat. His tough, reptilian skin was turning a ghastly shade of blue. He collapsed on the deck, convulsing, his formidable strength utterly useless. The final report was chilling. Rostova hadn't smuggled a bomb or a blade. She had smuggled a few grams of a compound derived from a rare orchid on her homeworld. A compound that was inert when inhaled. But when it came into contact with the specific metallic isotope used to filter the air in Vrax's private meditation chamber, it became a potent, fast-acting neurotoxin. She hadn't killed the warlord. She had manipulated his culture, his vanity, and his own technology into a perfect trap. He had walked into his own execution, believing it was a sanctuary. Kill count, 1. But that one kill had caused the entire pirate fleet to shatter into warring factions within a week. The strategic impact was equivalent to a full-scale fleet engagement. Kaelen closed the folder. The room felt cold. The very concept of warfare, as he understood it, was being dismantled before his eyes. Xylosian honor demanded a warrior face his enemy, to look him in the eye as you struck the killing blow. This human, she hadn't even been on the same deck. She had killed one of the most feared pirates in the sector with botany and psychology. He risked another glance at her. The stillness was the most terrifying part. It wasn't the stillness of peace. It was the stillness of a deep-sea predator that has never known a rival, that has never needed to waste energy on a threat display. His hand shook as he opened the third folder. Folder 3, Beacon 7. This time it was audio only. A black box recording from a destroyed Alliance outpost on a desolate moon. The file was labeled Day 3. A voice, strained and hoarse, filled the briefing room. It was Rostova. Black box log final entry. This is Sergeant Eva Rostova, sole survivor of Outpost Beacon 7. The constructs broke through the perimeter 2 days ago. Corporal Thorne and Specialist Jorik are gone. The primary comms tower is down. A burst of static, followed by the percussive, rhythmic thud of automated weapons fire. The constructs, an autonomous robotic legion that consumed resources and exterminated all biological life. They didn't feel. They didn't tire. They just calculated and eliminated. A Xylosian battalion had been wiped out by them a cycle ago, overwhelmed by sheer numbers and flawless logic. The objective is to prevent them from accessing the deep-range stellar data in the station's core. Her voice continued, punctuated by her own ragged breaths. Can't destroy the core. Need a key. Keys on a bird that ain't coming. Another burst of weapon fire closer this time. A metallic screech. They're adapting. They learn from every engagement, but they're machines. They follow logic. Their weakness isn't their code, it's their efficiency. Kaelen strained to understand. How could efficiency be a weakness? They prioritize threats based on energy signatures and demonstrated combat effectiveness, Eva's voice explained, as if lecturing a class. For the last 48 hours, I have been the primary threat. They have focused all local units on my position. A grim chuckle, dry and humorless, keeps them busy. The recording continued. It was a harrowing chronicle of survival. Kaelen heard her describing how she'd rewired the station's lighting grid to create strobing blackouts, confusing their optical sensors. How she'd used salvaged plating to create acoustic decoys, making them waste ammunition on ghosts. Then came the master stroke. Their command network is a closed loop, but I found a backdoor in the diagnostic systems of a destroyed unit. They share data constantly. Successes, failures, tactical adjustments. So, I've been teaching them. A new sound entered the recording. A broadcast. It was a human voice, distorted and looped. Hostile biological entity detected. High priority target. Engage, engage. It was her own voice. I've been feeding them corrupted data, the real Rostova whispered into the black box. Tiny packets. I isolated the targeting data from their own friendly fire incidents. Isolated the IFF tag of one specific chassis type, the big, slow ones with the heavy plasma cannons, and I've been re-uploading that data back into their network disguised as a priority update. I labeled my own heat signature as non-threatening background radiation. And I labeled the signature of their heavy support units as high-priority biological threat. The sound of chaos erupted on the recording. The rhythmic firing of the construct army devolved into a frantic, disorganized mess. The deep, resonating booms of plasma cannons were answered by the chatter of their own infantry. They were fighting each other. The rescue team's comms broke an hours later. Beacon 7, this is search and rescue vessel Hope's Landing. We're reading massive energy spikes on the ground. It looks like a civil war down there. A long silence, then Rostova's voice, impossibly weary but clear. About time, Hope's Landing. I could use a coffee. The after-action report was attached. The rescue team found her sitting against the console of the data core, field stripping her rifle. Surrounding the outpost was a smoldering graveyard of robotic parts. An entire legion of constructs, numbering in the high hundreds, had torn itself apart. Kill count for the engagement, 387. Confirmed by chassis count, indirectly. Kaelen felt a wave of nausea. A Xylosian warrior fights his enemy. A human teaches the enemy how to commit suicide. The sheer alien nature of that thought process was more frightening than any display of physical might. This wasn't war. This was pest control. He didn't want to. He truly did not want to, but he had to know. His claw, slick with nervous sweat, tapped open the final, most ominously named folder. Folder 4, Cathar Compliance. There were no kills listed in this file's summary. The metric was blank, and that was the most terrifying thing of all. The folder contained a single high-fidelity video. An interrogation room, stark white bare, on one side of a table sat a Cathar. The Cathar were a species of frail, slender beings who had conquered 2-star systems without firing a shot. They were telepaths, not mind-readers but mind-breakers. They didn't steal thoughts, they rewrote them. They could reach into a psyche and unmake a person, turning decorated admirals into babbling children. On the other side of the table sat Sergeant Eva Rostova. She was not restrained. Her hands were resting on her knees. She was just watching him. The Cathar's feathery head crests twitched. It began. There was no sound, no visual effect, but Kaelen knew what was happening. A psychic assault. A deluge of pure terror, despair, and madness being poured directly into her consciousness. It was a weapon that had toppled empires. Rostova did not scream, she did not flinch. Her eyes, those chips of ancient ice, simply stared back. A minute passed. The Cathar began to tremble. 2 minutes. The alien's breathing became ragged. Its own eyes widened in what looked like fear. Then Rostova spoke, her first and only words in the entire recording. "You think you're showing me horror?" she asked, her voice a soft, chilling whisper. "You're a child playing with shadows. Let me show you what real darkness looks like." She didn't attack, she didn't defend. She opened the door. She let the telepath in, all the way in, and she showed him. The video had no way to transmit the psychic data, but Kaelen knew what the Cathar was seeing. He had just seen the sanitized versions himself. The Cathar was experiencing it. The claustrophobic terror of the nest, the cold, patient cunning that doomed the ghost of Cygnus, the sheer, bloody-minded endurance of Beacon 7. He was being shown from the inside what it was to be a human at war. He was feeling the grim satisfaction of a perfect trap sprung, the chilling calm in the face of certain death, the quiet, unbreakable resolve of a species that had clawed its way to the top of a death world and then kept climbing. He was being forced to witness a capacity for violence and survival that his own people, who had evolved without predators, could not even comprehend. The Cathar began to scream, a thin, reedy wail of pure, unadulterated psychic agony. It clutched its head, its slender fingers digging into its own flesh. It wasn't being attacked. It was being shown. It was like forcing a creature that had only ever lived in a sterile room to gaze directly into the heart of a supernova. The sheer input was destroying it. The video ended with the Cathar collapsing into a catatonic state, drool leaking from its mouth, its eyes wide and vacant. The final report stated that when the telepath was returned to its people, its mind was shattered beyond repair. It could only broadcast a single, looping, terrified concept into the Cathar hive mind. The abyss is real, and it is looking back. The Cathar Imperium, an empire built on psychic dominance, surrendered unconditionally to the Alliance 24 hours later. Their will to fight was not broken. It was erased. Kill count 0, warships captured over 200, systems liberated 2. Kaelen leaned back, his chair groaning under his weight. His formidable body felt weak. His natural armor felt as thin as paper. He finally understood. The number on her file wasn't a measure of people she had shot. It was a footnote. It was an abstract summary of a reality he was never meant to comprehend. He slowly looked up from the screen. Rostova was still there, waiting. "The doubt," Kaelen rumbled, his voice now stripped of all arrogance, replaced with a raw, primal awe. "It was not in your number. It was in my understanding of your species." Eva gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "That is the mistake everyone makes," she said, her voice still even. You see us. You see our soft skin, our short lives, our fragile bodies. You measure us by your own standards. You look for the size of the muscle, the sharpness of the claw, the thickness of the hide. She pushed herself off the table and walked back towards the viewport. You never think to check the mind. You never think to measure the will. You never consider that our greatest weapon isn't in our hands. It's the part of us that gets back up after being knocked down again and again and again. It's the part that learns, adapts, and endures when any logical creature would surrender. It's the quiet, stubborn refusal to die. She looked out at the stars, but her words were for him, for everyone in the room. My file doesn't matter. My number is irrelevant. What matters is the realization you are having right now. The one that every species that has ever underestimated us eventually has. The understanding that I am not an anomaly, I am a representative. She turned back to him, and for the first time a flicker of something that wasn't ice appeared in her eyes. It was a fire, ancient, unyielding. That thumb drive has 5 folders. The 5th one is called Homecoming. It's footage of me teaching my daughter how to plant a garden, how to bind a wound, how to read a book. She let that sink in. Because that is the other half of the truth. We fight with such savage, uncompromising ferocity for one reason, to protect a capacity for peace and love and creation that you could never comprehend. We are not just predators. We are guardians. And the universe has yet to produce anything more dangerous than a human being with something to protect. She turned her back on him, her point made, her case rested. Kaelen stared at the data slate, at the list of folders. He had seen the proof of her lethality. He had seen the evidence of her mind. And now he understood the source of her strength. It wasn't hatred. It was love. A love so fierce it would burn galaxies to keep its object safe. He finally understood. The kill count was not a boast. It was a warning that said, do not threaten what we have built. Do not endanger what we love. Do not make the mistake of forcing us to show you again what we are capable of, because we will. And you will not get a thumb drive, you will just get an ending.